My husband stood before his country club friends and auctioned me off for $1, called me boring, predictable, a trophy wife with nothing to say. Those white men in their tailored suits laughed so hard their scotch nearly spilled. But baby, they had no idea who they were playing with. Before I tell you how I made them all regret that night, hit that subscribe button. Because this story about respect, revenge, and reclaiming your power, you're gonna want to share it. Now let me take you back to where it all started. It was a Saturday night in September, and the Riverside Country Club smelled like old money and older traditions. You know the kind of place I'm talking about. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's houses, waiters in white gloves, and enough diamonds in that room to fund a small nation. I wore a champagne-colored dress that cost $3,000. My hair was laid to perfection, and I smiled that smile I'd perfected over 6 years of marriage, the smile that said I belonged there, even though every woman in that room had made it clear I didn't. The charity auction was in full swing. Gregory, that's my husband, was standing at our table with his usual crew. Preston, the hedge fund guy. William, who inherited his grandfather's manufacturing plants. Todd, whose family name was on half the buildings downtown. They were drinking aged scotch and cigars were being passed around, and I was sitting there like I always did, quiet, observing, being the perfect accessory to my husband's perfect life. Then Gregory stood up, and I should have known something was coming. He had that look in his eye, that smirk he got when he was about to perform for his friends. He walked up to the auctioneer during a break and whispered something. The auctioneer, this older white man named Charles, laughed and nodded. My stomach dropped. "Gentlemen, ladies," Charles announced into the microphone, "we have a special last-minute addition to our auction. Gregory Hammond has generously offered a dinner date with his lovely wife, Danielle. Now, Gregory tells me she's quite boring, predictable, talks about nothing important, but she does know which fork to use." The room erupted in laughter. Gregory was grinning like he'd just told the joke of the century. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, that smile still on my face. But inside, I felt something break, and then something else clicked into place. "Let's start the bidding at $1, Charles said, still chuckling. "Come on, gentlemen. Surely someone wants dinner with this lovely lady. $1. Going once, going twice?" Preston raised his hand, laughing. "I'll take that dollar dinner. Might be the most entertainment I get all week." The gavel came down, sold for $1. My husband had just valued me at less than a cup of coffee, and the whole room thought it was hilarious. I stood up, walked over to Preston, kissed him on the cheek, and said, "I'll make sure to bring conversation cards so you won't be too bored." More laughter. I looked at Gregory, and I gave him that smile, the real one, the one that should have warned him. His face changed for just a second. He looked confused, maybe a little nervous. "Good. Let me take you back so you understand how we got here. 6 years before that night, I was Danielle Porter, and I was damn good at my job. I was a pharmaceutical sales director, making 6 figures, managing a team of 15 people across 3 states. I had my own condo, my own car, my own life. I met Gregory at a medical conference where his company was looking to buy property for a new research facility. He was charming, successful, confident. He pursued me like I was the only woman in the world. We got married 14 months later in a wedding that cost more than I'd made in 2 years. His mother cried through the whole ceremony, and not happy tears. After the honeymoon in Bali, Gregory sat me down and explained that his position in society required a certain image. He needed a wife who could host dinners, attend charity functions, represent the Hammond family name. He asked me to step back from my career. "Just temporarily," he said. "Just until we got settled." I was in love, so I said yes. I gave up my job, my team, my independence, and slowly, month by month, I became invisible. His friends talked over me. His mother criticized everything from my cooking to my clothes to the fact that I couldn't give Gregory children fast enough. Business dinners meant sitting at the other end of the table with the wives, talking about decorators and vacation homes, while the men discussed real estate deals and market trends. Whenever I tried to contribute to conversations about business or finance or anything substantive, Gregory would pat my hand and say, "Honey, let's not bore everyone with shop talk." When I suggested going back to work part-time, he said, "Why would my wife need to work? What would people think?" I became the boring wife, the quiet wife, the wife who smiled and nodded and existed as an accessory to his success. But here's what Gregory never bothered to find out: I kept my pharmaceutical licenses active. I maintained my industry connections through lunch dates he thought were just shopping trips with girlfriends. I read every business journal, every market report, every piece of news about commercial real estate that crossed my path, and I watched him. I watched him very carefully. The morning after the auction, my face was on the society page. Local real estate moguls charity stunt raises eyebrows in dollars. There I was, smiling next to Preston, with a caption that made me sound like a punchline. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My mother, my sister, old colleagues, everyone asking if I was okay. If that was really what happened, Gregory came downstairs around 10, whistling, completely unbothered. I was sitting at the kitchen island with my coffee and the newspaper. "Morning, honey," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Pretty successful night, wasn't it? We raised over 200,000. I looked up at him. "You humiliated me in front of 300 people. He laughed. "Oh, come on, Danny. It was just a joke. Everyone knows you're not actually boring. It was for charity. Don't be so sensitive." "A joke," I repeated. "Yes, a joke. Preston's going to take you to that new French place downtown. Enjoy yourself. Buy something nice after. Put it on my card." He thought he could buy his way out of it. He thought I was that simple. I smiled at him. "Okay, Gregory, whatever you say." He went to his study, and I went to my office, the room he thought I used for planning dinner parties and charity events. I opened my laptop and started making calls. The first one was to Dr. Francis Okafor, my old mentor from the pharmaceutical world. The second was to a divorce attorney named Helen Ross, the kind of lawyer who ate men like Gregory for breakfast. The third was to my accountant, who'd been quietly managing an investment account Gregory didn't know about, built from birthday money and gifts from my family over the years. Then I started digging into Gregory's business. See, being the invisible wife had benefits. I'd attended dozens of dinner parties where Gregory and his partners drank too much and talked too freely. I'd overheard phone conversations he didn't think I was listening to. I'd seen documents left out on his desk that he assumed I wouldn't understand. And what I found was beautiful in its simplicity. Gregory's commercial real estate empire was built on inflated property values. He'd been working with appraisers to overvalue properties, then securing loans and investments based on those false numbers. His partners were in on it. They'd been doing it for years, moving money around, keeping investors happy with returns that came from new investors' money. It was a scheme that would eventually collapse, but in the meantime, they were all getting very rich. I spent 6 months building my case. I photographed documents when Gregory left them out. I recorded conversations where he discussed the details with his partners. Thinking I was too focused on my book to pay attention, I traced money through shell companies and offshore accounts. I compiled everything into organized files with dates, amounts, names, but I didn't go to the authorities. Not yet. First, I had other plans. I reconnected with Francis, who helped me start a consulting business. Small at first, advising pharmaceutical companies on market expansion and sales strategies, I took meetings during the day while Gregory was at work. Within 3 months, I had 5 clients. Within 6 months, I'd made more than I'd made in my last year. At my old job, I started a charity foundation focused on education access for underprivileged kids. I threw myself into it, attending events, giving interviews, getting my name in the papers for something other than being Gregory's wife. I joined boards. I spoke on panels. Suddenly, people wanted to hear what the boring wife had to say. Gregory was confused. "What's gotten into you?" he asked one night. "You said I was boring," I told him sweetly. "I'm just trying to be more interesting for you, honey." He didn't like it, but he couldn't complain publicly. His wife being successful and charitable only made him look better. So he smiled and took credit for my transformation, telling everyone how he'd encouraged me to pursue my passions. The whole time, I was playing the long game. I was kind to him, loving, even. I made his favorite meals. I hosted his business dinners flawlessly. I went to every country club function and smiled at every person who'd laughed at me that night. And I waited. 1 year and 2 months after the auction, I hosted my own charity gala, same country club. Same people, same crystal chandeliers and designer dresses. But this time, I was the one on stage. My foundation had raised $3 million for scholarships. I had sponsors, media coverage, and a waiting list of people who wanted to attend. Gregory had to come. His wife was the guest of honor. He sat at our table, surrounded by the same men who'd laughed at his joke. Preston was there, William was there, Todd was there. They all congratulated me on my success, probably wondering when I'd become a real person instead of a decoration. I gave a speech that night about dignity and respect, about the value of every person, about how we should never let anyone make us feel small. I talked about building something meaningful, about using our resources to lift others up. The whole time I looked at Gregory. He was smiling, but his eyes were nervous. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. At the end of my speech, I announced a major donation to my foundation from an anonymous donor, $500,000. The room applauded. What I didn't say was that the money came from my consulting business, the one Gregory didn't know had grown so large, the one that proved I was never boring. I was just patient. 2 hours into the event, federal agents walked through the door, not to arrest anyone, just to ask questions. They wanted to speak with Gregory and his partners about some irregularities in property valuations and loan applications. Nothing formal, they said, just routine inquiry. But everyone in that room knew what it meant. I watched Gregory's face go pale. I watched Preston spill his drink. I watched William and Todd exchange panicked looks. I stood next to my husband and played my role perfectly. "Gregory, what's this about? Is everything okay?" The media had a field day. Local real estate mogul under federal investigation. Hammond Commercial Properties accused of fraud. FBI investigating property valuation scheme. It was everywhere. And I was there, the supportive wife, shocked and betrayed by my husband's actions. I gave one interview where I cried real tears, not for him, but for the life I'd wasted trying to be enough for him. The next morning, Gregory was served with divorce papers. My lawyer had been thorough. The prenup he'd made me sign 6 years ago was invalidated due to fraud in his financial disclosures. Turned out he'd hidden assets during our marriage, which meant the prenup was worthless. I was entitled to half of everything, and since his everything was currently being seized by federal authorities, that meant I got the house, the cars, the liquid assets he'd stashed in accounts he thought were secret. His mother called me screaming. How could I do this to her son? How could I betray the family? I listened to her rant for 5 minutes, then I said, "Your son auctioned me off for $1 and called me boring in front of 300 people. I'm just showing him how interesting I can be." Gregory tried everything. He called, texted, showed up at the house, my house now. He apologized, cried, begged. He said he'd been under stress, that he'd made mistakes, that he loved me and we could work through this. I agreed to meet him one last time. He came to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. I had security nearby, but I let him in. We sat in the living room where we'd entertained his friends so many times he looked terrible. Hadn't slept, hadn't shaved. His empire was crumbling. His partners had turned on each other. Federal charges were coming. He was looking at serious prison time. "Danny, please," he said. "You have to help me. Talk to your lawyer. Tell them you don't want the divorce. Stand by me through this. We can get through this together." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. That smile. "Gregory, do you remember the night you auctioned me off? That was a mistake. I was drunk. I was stupid. I'm sorry. Do you remember what you said? You called me boring, predictable, said I talked about nothing important. The whole room laughed at me. Preston bought dinner with me for $1. $1, Gregory. I know, and I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I leaned forward. Let me tell you about that boring, predictable wife. She's the one who documented every illegal transaction you made for 3 years. She's the one who recorded your conversations with your partners. She's the one who compiled evidence of your fraud and handed it over to federal investigators 6 months ago. She's the one who built $1 million consulting business while you thought she was having lunch with girlfriends. She's the one who made sure the prenup would be invalidated. She's the one who orchestrated every single thing that's happening to you right now. His face went through about 5 different emotions: confusion, disbelief, realization, horror, rage. You did this? I did this. The boring wife destroyed your entire life, Gregory. And I did it so thoroughly that you never saw it coming. You were so sure I was too stupid, too simple, too unimportant to matter. That was your mistake. He stood up, started pacing, ran his hands through his hair. I'll tell them. I'll tell everyone what you did. Tell them what? That your wife gathered evidence of your actual crimes? That she protected herself from a fraud? That she built a successful business? Go ahead. See how that works out for you. You vindictive. $1, Gregory. That's what you said I was worth. I just wanted to show you the real value of the woman you married. Now get out of my house. Security escorted him out. I watched him leave, and I felt nothing but relief. 6 years of making myself smaller, quieter, less than. It was finally over. That was 8 months ago. Gregory's in prison now. Federal fraud charges, 3 to 5 years. His partners took plea deals and testified against him. The country club revoked his membership and kept mine. His mother hasn't spoken to me since the divorce was finalized, which honestly might be the best part of this whole story. My consulting firm has 12 employees. Now I'm on the board of 3 major pharmaceutical companies. My foundation has provided scholarships to over 200 students. I bought a loft downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. I wake up every morning and drink my coffee in peace. And nobody calls me boring. Last week, I ran into Preston at a business conference. He was uncomfortable, apologetic. Danielle, I just want to say, that night at the auction, I should have said something. I'm sorry. I smiled at him. Not that smile. A real one. Preston, you bought dinner with me for $1 and thought it was funny. You all thought I was nothing. Thank you for that. Because underestimating me was the biggest gift you could have given me. It let me work in peace. Here's what I learned through all of this. Never let anyone make you small. Never accept being treated as less than you are. And never, ever underestimate a quiet woman who's paying attention. That smile you see? The one that looks like compliance? It might be the mask of someone planning your downfall. So that's how a boring wife worth $1 became the woman who destroyed a real estate empire and rebuilt herself from the ashes. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel small, leave a comment below, share your story, and subscribe because I've got more tales about women who refuse to stay silent. Remember, never mistake kindness for weakness, and never, ever auction off a woman who's smarter than you. That smile you see? It might be the last thing you underestimate. Now go be great, and don't let anyone price you at $1. Not ever.